Hello and welcome to the Spirit Vessel Conversation Series, Professionals, Perspectives, and Death Care. My name is Jessica Wirtz. I'm the founder of Spirit Vessel, and we're so glad you're here with us today. The Professionals, Perspectives, and Death Care series is centered around conversations with professionals of all types in the death care and emotional wellness space. These conversations aim to help bring awareness, acceptance, and normalization to death and the grieving process. If you enjoy these conversations, please consider sharing them on your favorite social media platform and be sure to sign up for our newsletter so you'll be the first to know when a new conversation is released. With me today is my sister and Spirit Vessel co-founder, Amanda McClellan, and we are joined by our guest, Morgan Yarbrough.
Morgan Yarbrough has been Recompose Seattle's services manager since 2020. Morgan works to help develop ceremonial offerings at Recompose and is honored to lead a team of incredible death care professionals. She's been exploring death care since 2016 and holds multiple funeral director and embalmer licenses. Her goal is to support people in choosing meaningful, empowering options when it comes to death care, and believes that compassion, education, and understanding are paramount in accomplishing this goal. Prior to joining Recompose, Morgan led community events focused on death education and what it means to be mortal through her Oregon-based group, Our Own Hands. Morgan is a devoted animal lover and spends time keeping up with several rescue animals, as well as creating pen and ink illustrations, avidly collecting books, and gardening whenever possible. Welcome, Morgan. Thanks for being here. We're so excited to have you.
Yeah, thanks for that introduction, Amanda. I appreciate it. Thanks, Jess, for inviting me on today.
Our pleasure. Well, we can't wait to dive in a little bit and just get to know who you are and hear your story and how you came to be in this work. So maybe just give us a little intro from the beginning where you kind of entered the idea or the death work industry in any way.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a question I get asked a lot, and it makes me kind of laugh a little bit because I think of when I was 10 years old doing funerals for my goldfish at home and trying to talk to my mother about differences in classes when it comes to death, and she didn't really love that. So that's what that kind of reminds me of. And so I lived a lot of my younger life kind of thinking about death and how it affects people, but not really having a place to take that because it was such a taboo in my family. But I kind of carried that with me, and I went into physics and tech after high school, and I loved it, but I realized that it wasn't my passion and what I wanted to be for my career. So I made this really sudden change. I had just been kind of studying death care and was like, I'm going to make the jump, applied to funeral homes until one hired me on as an intern. And that was really my first foray into the death care world as a career. And it was a family-run funeral home. They needed the help, and they were just kind of like, here's how this works, shadow a director for a little while, and then good luck. And luckily, I adapted to it pretty quickly. I loved it. I realized I didn't want to do anything else, but it was a pretty traditional funeral home, and my interest was really in finding the alternative methods of death care and caring for people in that realm. So that's kind of why I started to pursue Recompose.
Beautiful. And so this funeral home, was it in Oregon or is it in Washington, or where were you at this point?
Yeah, it was in Oregon. The first funeral home where I trained was in a little town called Cottage Grove, which I absolutely love, very beautiful. And then they had another facility in Eugene, Oregon, which people might be more familiar with because of the University of Oregon. So that's where I did a lot of my work there in developing new options for people at that funeral home. So I was pretty grateful the owner let me do that. I brought in more clients for natural burial and home funerals there. And then I moved up to Washington for Recompose within like 2 weeks in September 2020. So huge jump, but really exciting.
Okay, cool. I want you to expand on that, please, because that's a lot just to throw into a sentence.
It was a lot to take on in my life. It was a really, really sudden change. So I had kind of towards the end of my career there in Eugene, like I said, I had drawn in more green burial clients because we had a cemetery there with a really underutilized green burial area. So just kind of through talking to people and educating them about their options, they realized, many of them, oh, hey, I didn't know this existed. I'm interested in this. And by letting people know what their rights are as far as home funerals and other things go, a lot of that can really resonate. If you don't know what your options are, how can you know fully what's right for you? So that was important work that I did there. And I also realized that while I loved what I was doing there, I wanted to do more. I really wanted to break out of that box. And I had been following Recompose for a little while and some other progressive death care companies. And when they listed a position for services manager, I read it and I realized I could do that work. I had already been sort of doing a lot of those things at the place that I was at, but living in this confined box of people who were afraid to kind of break barriers and do more radically different things. So I applied kind of on a whim, not thinking I was really going to get the job. And then I did. And they were like, can you start in a couple of weeks? And I was like, heck yeah, I can. So I uprooted my whole life. I moved from my little cabin in the woods in Oregon to Seattle area, which was also a really big change. And the first thing I started to do as soon as I came to Recompose was sit down and say, how can we develop ceremony and ritual to offer our clients? And it was a huge change, but it was a beautiful change too.
I love it. Okay, cool. You and I actually have a lot in common. I once lived in a tiny cabin in Oregon too, for another conversation.
Yes, that's cool.
Wonderful. So for any of our listeners who aren't fully aware of what Recompose is, can you talk a little bit about the human composting and what happens there and just experience so far?
Yeah, I'd love to. So for a little bit of background, Katrina Spade is the CEO and founder of Recompose. She came up with this idea of human composting many years ago. I mean, pretty close to a decade now, when she was looking at her young son, who was maybe turning 3, and wondering where his life would be in 10, 20 years. And then she was like, well, where will I be in 10 and 20 years? I'm going to be an old person. And that, of course, leads to thoughts on one's mortality. And none of the current options felt right to her. She didn't like embalming or burial or cremation. Natural burial seemed closer, but you'd have to go pretty far outside of Seattle for that. So she wanted an urban option that was also environmentally friendly for death care. And she found out that livestock mortality composting existed. It's something that farmers have been using for a long time to dispose of their large animals when they die. So she was like, well, why can't we do that for humans? And she really looked into it. She has an architect background. She went to school for it. So she came up with the idea of the Urban Death Project, which was a facility for human composting. It's called Natural Organic Reduction. That would be in kind of city centers, and it was designed initially as kind of a big tower where people could carry their dead and place them inside. That evolved into what Recompose is now. It's not the Urban Death Project anymore. It's Recompose. And we have these beautiful individual, almost like a hive system where people are placed inside of their own vessel. They're there for about 30 days, and we place a lot of plant material in with them. So alfalfa, straw, wood chips. Over those 30 days, the body breaks down completely. There's some bones remaining, but most of it's soil. And then that soil and the bones come out, they are mechanically processed and then left to what we call cure for another 2 weeks. And at that point, your person has completely become soil, and that soil can be used to grow trees, plants, orchards, whatever you like. It's a full transformation.
It is so phenomenal what we can do now just by, using methods that have already existed and bringing them to areas, and it's so cool. It's just like so fascinating to me too, our culturalized with this, how we've really broken from, the standard body disposition and how we take care of the body after death. And all of these different options are out there right now. And it's amazing because I know Recompose is very much at the forefront of that. Like when Amanda and I came into this work with ceremony and ritual, we were already looking like, what are all the alternative ways we can do this? Because clearly, like historically, so much of this is based on religion and religious rituals. And now we're seeing like, that isn't relevant to this time and that doesn't serve people's needs. So where can we, create some reform and pioneer? And it's just so cool what you're doing. So talk to us a little bit more about your position in Recompose. I know that you are the ceremonialist, you help create arrangements. What does your day-to-day look like?
Well, my day-to-day is every day is a new day. It's always a little bit different, but right now my days look like preparing Recompose for opening our new location in South Seattle and envisioning what it's going to look like to have our clients in what we call our gathering space, having ceremony there in person, which is going to be a big change from what we've been able to do so far with COVID and the temporary facility we were in. So really designing those things, kind of navigating from start to finish what I want the client experience to be, along with the other members of our team, as well as developing the team that I have now. So I have 2 funeral directors, and soon I'll have a licensed intern and an assistant. So building out that team, becoming very cohesive, building close relationships, and also developing their own skills and how they do ceremony based on the outline that I created. I really want them to have their own voice and serve their families authentically. So we're always looking at developing those things as well.
Typically speaking to ceremony, or just all of the arrangements that are entailed once you meet the family?
Yeah, specifically ceremony. The arrangement is, I would say it's a little unique for Recompose as well, but once we have a person into our care, we do the initial kind of touching base with the family and making sure that they know the next steps are, they're on the same page with us all the time. And we want to make sure that that's a consistent experience as well. But after the formalities and the paperwork are done, we really shift focus into how can we help you through this ritual to develop something that feels right for you, based on what we're able to offer you. And that's really the focus of the client experience once their person is here at Recompose.
Beautiful. I love that it's so participatory and it's so empowering to the family because they get to make their own decisions instead of having some prescribed idea of what it needs to look like, or ritual or ceremony needs to look like. And it's often, it feels so removed and so sterile that it's like families can't even, have the moment to emote and really share in those spaces. So such powerful work.
Yeah, and what we really wanted to do was have sort of a basic ceremony structure for people who are walking into this, maybe having never done this before. A lot of people who come to us say it's their first time making arrangements for a funeral. So we do have some templates that people can use if they need some guidance, but we really want people to feel free in doing what feels right to them. They don't have to use our templates, but I have found that a lot of people like them. They like our carbon cycle ceremony and they like to build on it as well. Some people just go totally rogue, and I love that too. We want to do whatever feels right for them, even if it's like, having a Zoom dance party at the end. We'll totally be up for that. but we find that what we've built really resonates with people because it connects them not only to our process, but it reminds you that we're all a part of nature, and that's been really cool to see.
Yeah, most definitely. I love it. Yeah. So I just feel like so much of this is like at the center of Amanda and I's heart too, with helping just create that ceremony and ritual that is so highly personalized so that people can have their own experience. So super beautiful that you're able to use the platform that you are to share that. I am really curious how many families you meet, would you say, have a religious background to their ceremony, or do people really want to just use the template and work off of that? Like, what is your experience there?
Yeah, I would say it's in the minority, people who have a religious background informing their ceremony choices, but we certainly do get folks like that. And we welcome that as well. We've had outside priests come on for Zoom. We've had folks come in to do, blessings of the body separately. We always will welcome that. But by far, the majority of our clients are approaching it from a more secular space, and they take their spirituality is based on nature, I would say, nature and science, and the combination of those two, which really resonates with me. So I love working with those clients, but most of them really do like the template. And even if they don't want the template, but they're also not religious, it tends to just be centered around the individual who has died and their own tribute to them. It's a lot of sharing stories, a lot of photos, a lot of playing favorite songs. So very, very, very personalized.
Yeah, beautiful. So speaking of ceremony and ritual and just having the depth of knowledge that you do and the experience around it, working with families, where do you, or how do you really see the healing aspect of ceremony and ritual helping the families? Maybe it's in the moment, or maybe some sort of ongoing support that is offered. Like can you speak to that?
I can, yeah. And I think that ceremony affects both of those things that you just mentioned. But I find, and I've, having studied thanatology and done this work for a while, having ritual or ceremony around a death is a human instinct. Early humans did it. It's been happening for thousands of years. So even though our society is wildly different than it was thousands of years ago, that need has not gone away. And I find, especially when you're incorporating elements of nature and knowing that death is part of nature and it's just part of life, when you have ceremony that reminds you of that, it does heal you in the moment, but it helps you integrate that loss to move forward after the ceremony through the rest of your life. And not everybody wants a big, huge ceremony that's public facing, but I always encourage people, even if it's something as simple as going home by yourself and lighting a candle and meditating for a moment, just something as small as that. It's important to help you process that and to name that your person has died and incorporate that into your life. And I've had people come back to me who didn't have a ceremony through us, but did something on their own and say, I can't imagine how people can get through a death without having that ceremonial aspect. So the healing power of that is strong and very apparent.
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah, it's pretty crazy how this culture just wants to sweep everything under the rug. Is,
Yeah.
Everything from death to all the emotions around it, as if you can just bypass this. It's kind of wild. So
yeah, it is. And it's not, death, grief, everything to do with it. None of that is linear. And none of it fits in this nice little efficient timeline that you can then be done with and go back to your work. That's not how things operate. And it's really damaging to try and act like that's how things do work.
yeah, most definitely. Maybe your earlier experiences with death that kind of led you into this work, or if there were any, that were a little bit more specific, and just what you find that you're able to offer people now through Recompose that you wished you had then, that people are able to receive at Recompose, that, a more traditional, religious or otherwise funeral would not be providing to people.
Sure. Yeah, I can speak to a couple different sides of that. So in my work at a more conventional funeral home that did, embalming, cremation, things like that, I would find that people would make arrangements, particularly for a cremation, usually a direct cremation, and it was all business. It was like, let's get this paperwork done. That's it. Here's the urn, goodbye. And that works for some people, and that's okay. But I really felt that they were just choosing it because they had to, not because they really wanted to, and not because it had any sort of meaning for them. And to me, it seemed like that was a much harder way to navigate such a huge life transition versus what I see at Recompose, which is people choose us because they want our services and the services are deeply meaningful. And I also saw a little bit about that in what I was able to do at that conventional funeral home, in allowing convincing the owner to allow me to do home funerals and more to him what seemed like out of the box options for families. I could see that when I said, hey, what do you want? Let's do what you want, even if it seems strange or you're not sure, let's talk about it, and helping them actualize that. Even just looking in their eyes, observing their behaviors, how they spoke about it, it's a world of difference. Being able to choose what you want and what feels right for you to navigate death, which is, it changes everything, right? You should be able to choose the ceremony that you want in that way. It was a world of difference, and I realized truly that that's how it should be for everybody. And I felt that by going to Recompose, I would be able to do more work in that realm and have the freedom to really offer more customized ceremonies, sure, but something that resonated with people so deeply that not only did they want this, but you could tell that it was healing them by receiving that soil, by having that ceremony. So not only is it customized, it's healing. And I wish I could express to you the look on people's faces when they see their person's soil for the first time, because they walk up to it, they touch it. Sometimes people cry, sometimes they laugh, but that moment is unlike anything I've ever felt with cremation or even embalming and burial with a traditional religious service. That joy and that meaning is not there for the most part. And seeing that change has been incredible. And I want the industry to move more towards that.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you think that is, that feeling? Because to me, it's like cremation and Recompose, just having the material in your hand and it being earth, it being body. It's very similar to me.
Mhm.
Can you describe a little bit more in depth, like what is that look on their face? What is the difference that you would say between ash and soil can give?
Yeah, so the soil is, I think first of all, it's a newer option, so I think perhaps there's some novelty there. But the realization that your person has become part of the earth is very different than realizing that your person has been reduced to what's bone fragments, and that you are going to usually sit on a shelf or bury. Some people choose to scatter, but with having all the soil, they know that it's a true return to the earth. Their person's molecules are still there, and we talk about that a lot when we're interacting with clients and in the ceremony versus with incineration. That's not true. So your person is still there in the soil. They're there in a different way. But all of our carbon molecules, all of the things that make us up, they're still there. And I think having that realization makes a big difference. But also, I mean, when you go out and you stick your hand in the dirt in your garden, that is such a different feeling than if you were to go stick your hand in, like, ash or an urn. Really different experience. So that's it. It's that connection back to nature, truly to nature and to earth, that makes a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. Beautiful. I am also curious as far as where Recompose is moving. Are there a lot of pre-plannings being happening? I'm imagining it's just like booked out for years right now, but I also understand that's why you're expanding. How many of your clients choose to pre-plan this?
We have a good amount of folks who choose to pre-plan. I think right now Recompose, which is our plan ahead program, has well over 1,000 members, and we opened that in August of 2020. And we actually have another 800 who will be signing up soon. We paused it for a moment to revamp the system a little bit. So it's about to reopen. We have all those people who will then be signing up. We get a lot of people who haven't pre-planned as well, but I'd say maybe about a third of our at-need clients have been pre-composed members. So a lot of people want to sign up for this. It's pretty cool.
Oh, I know it because as Amanda and I stepped more into this work and into the work of ceremony, so many of my friends would send me the link. Have you heard of this guy?
Well, that's
Like
exciting.
11
I love
times
that.
yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. It speaks to people from all over the age range. A lot of times it'll be people in their 70s who tend to pre-plan with a funeral home. I mean, I'm signed up obviously as a member of Recompose, but a lot of other people in their 30s and 40s are too, which is very unique, very interesting to see. But yeah, we are expanding. It's not uncommon to have maybe 3 to 4 weeks of wait time before a person is placed into a vessel, just because we started out with 15, and the demand for our services is way more than that. So when we open up our new facility in Seattle in just a couple of weeks, we will be starting out with 30 vessels, and at the end of the year have 52. But we're also about to open or to start building out a Denver facility, and that facility is going to be huge with a couple of hundred vessels being available.
Incredible. And do you see Recompose going international at some point as well? Or are you mostly going to reside in the States?
We would love to be international someday, but we need to take what we learned from the Seattle facility and from Denver before we even think about that. It'll be many, many years in the future. And we'll probably be opening, I would say we'd want to get more of an East Coast presence first too. But yes, one day we're looking forward to being international.
Yeah, good.
Mm.
Well, I think it is really incredible, and it does speak so much to just where our culture is, but also, like you are saying, the novelty of having something so new at our fingertips to consider. It's, the age range there that's really looking at these options is so much younger. Do you see the age range of your demographic being above, I don't know, 50? Do you have many elderly folks who are really interested in this?
We do actually. And I think some of that is people who are younger knowing this option exists and choosing it for their elderly parents. But actually, a lot of people who are in their 70s and 80s have heard about Recompose. Maybe it's through their children who are telling them. But we had one woman in particular who was afraid of cremation and didn't want to be buried. Truly just living in fear at an elderly age, and her daughter told her about Recompose, and she breathed a sigh of relief, and she's like, oh, that's what I want. I'm so glad that that's there. That's what I want. And it made a huge difference. So yeah, we do have a lot of older folks who, now that they know this option exists, are relieved to come to us. So I would say it's primarily older people, but we have a lot of younger folks coming to us too.
Yeah, fascinating. Very
Mhm.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm in the same place. It's like I'm, even though I'm in this work, my heart always goes back to like I'd rather do a natural burial,
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
just feels like that's what my body wants. It makes the most sense at this point. It's like, how can we just keep adding and digging and
Yeah,
create more material and product to like throw it? It's like, what was the point, So
I know.
I love that we are becoming more environmentally aware and
Mhm.
sensitive and curious in this field. And just absolutely, yeah, big fans of Recompose and all of the insight and foresight that's happening over there.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Is there anything else you'd like to share with us about where you are interested personally, where this field is going, aside from Recompose or within Recompose? Just curiosities or interests or yeah, anything exciting that's kind of on the table for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm always interested in observing where the industry is going, especially as younger funeral directors are now coming into the industry, and we have a different generation of funeral home owners kind of cropping up. That's pretty fun to watch. But I'm really excited to be doing the work I'm doing with Recompose, and particularly our relationship with the Forest Conservation Bells Mountain, which is in southern Washington. People can choose to donate their person's soil there, and it'll be used in restoration projects. And that's already been underway. The restoration projects are beginning. I would say probably 70% of people donate all or some of their person's soil there. And what I'm really excited for is developing a program where families can come visit that space and spend some time with the land and connect with it and feel that their person is present in that ecosystem. We've had a few tours already with families in very early stages, and you can tell that them being there at that land makes a huge difference, and that they feel very connected to it and at peace to know that their person is there and that the land is being cared for. So I'm really looking forward to developing that more and observing the relationship with nature and people who have had that loss and who have chosen Recompose. I think that it's worth studying and it's beautiful to be a part of. So that's what I'm the most excited for right now.
Oh yeah, I did not realize that that portion was happening. I
Mhm.
got chills when
Yeah.
you said that because just understanding how people have a relationship to the land
Mhm.
versus having a relationship to a headstone or a burial site.
Yeah.
It gives you also this relationship to the natural world and to Mother Earth, and
Mhm.
just this realizing like we come from this, we need to take care of this, and we're going
Yep.
back. So that is super
Yep.
powerful.
It's hugely powerful. And yeah, like I said, being able to show people that space and let them be in it is powerful. And there's no memorialization at Bell's Mountain. So like there's no headstones, like you just said, there's nothing like that. Your person has fully returned to the land, to the ecosystem as a whole. And so when you are there, you're being held by that land and you're being held by your person in a way that I think resonates to people's core from what I've been able to see. And it's so special. The land is stunning. Everybody who's a part of that team is very passionate and compassionate and loves to care for the people who visit. So it is an incredible offering, and I can't wait to continue building it.
Yeah, for sure. I'd love to see that idea spread
Mhm.
throughout the state so we have
Yeah.
more sacred spaces that,
Yes.
get
Yeah. Me too.
recognized and stay untouched.
Hmm. Hmm.
Fun. Well, I'm really excited to see where that project goes and stay on top of that and
Hmm.
just hear more as it progresses. So
Yeah. Well, check in with me and I'll keep you up to date. It's something that I'm working really hard on to get going. So stay tuned.
for sure. Absolutely will. Well, thank you so much for your time. This was a really fun conversation, and we love just hearing where you're at and what you're doing in the world and such important work. So just grateful for souls out there like you that are really pioneering and planting seeds for the rest. So thanks.
That's a very good metaphor. We love planting seeds here. Thank you, Amanda and Jess. It was lovely to talk to you.
Yeah, absolutely. And Morgan, before we go, where can people learn more about Recompose and about your work and all of that?
Yeah, so you can visit our website at www.recompose.life. You can follow us on Instagram at Recompose Life, and we post updates there. Also on the website, you can sign up for our newsletter, and we send that out maybe once every couple of months. So you can find us there. You can visit ourownhands.us to keep up with my personal work. I do a lot of community outreach and education. So for those who are in Washington, you can find me there, and we can talk, and you can come out to my events as well.
Wonderful. That is awesome. As a reminder for our listeners, if you enjoyed today's conversation, please share it on your favorite social media platform and be sure to sign up for our newsletter at spiritvessel.com/newsletter so that you'll be the first to know when a new conversation is released. And Morgan, thank you again. This was wonderful today.
Thank you both so much.